Hi, ladies and gents. Welcome back to Marketing, Management, and Money. We are your hosts, Ryan Owens
and Ryan Murray.
This week, we will be talking about the beloved meeting.
Fond memories of all the beautiful meetings that I've sat through just flashed through my mind.
Right? There's so many times that I can think of where I bet that exact same thing. It's like you're sitting in a meeting and you are not present mentally whatsoever. Whether you're asleep or you're on your phone or you are far, far away in the recesses of your memory.
But since you're the exception and the rest of us are...
Right?
Yeah. How many times are you sitting in a meeting just wondering, why are we here?
Oh, yeah.
What are we supposed to be doing?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I feel like there are way too many meetings, or at least too many large chunks of meetings that are completely worthless.
Yeah.
Right?
Now, let's be clear. We're not bashing on the meeting itself. The idea of getting together, especially with the management team, and even if you're a solo entrepreneur, it's vitally important that you take time to sit down with maybe a mentor or a peer or someone who you can share ideas with and collaborate with, because as human beings, we're social creatures. We need to express, we need to feel validated, we need to share ideas. And so the concept of meeting together is a very powerful concept.
Oh, yeah.
When done correctly.
Yeah, there's so many good things that could come out of things like synergy, or, when people are feeling empowered or trusted in a group and an environment. There's so many great things that can come out of the collective, right? We're together, we're better than the sum of our parts, essentially.
Yes.
That Gestalt theory.
Right.
So, I mean, I feel like we could give examples all day long of hard things in meetings, right? So we had, I remember there was this company that I worked for, and we were required to have it was a hotel chain. We were required to have a mandatory meeting at the very beginning of every day. So if you were late, everybody knew it. It was 8 a.m. sharp.
Okay.
And so we gathered, and
you're such a morning person that I figured that that was no problem for you.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. That's why that's like burned into my memory, because I was always late. But that's the thing is, no, I showed up on time, but I wasn't prepared at all for that meeting. I had nothing to contribute going into that meeting because there was so much pressure around you show up, you're expected X, Y, and Z, and we move on from there to our day. And the meeting was structured in such a way that it had no purpose, right? It was like
meeting for the sake of meeting.
Yeah, get everybody there on time. The boss is going to come down and yell at everybody, and then we all leave and figure out what we're going to do for the rest of the day or whatever, And I feel like that's one example of how a lot of meetings can go, right?
Or okay, so I've got one, and this one I don't know if I had it to do over again, if I would have done the same thing. But I was in a meeting, and the owner of the company went on a rant for at least an hour, at least. And at the end of his rant, I sort of called him on it. And I said, I'm like, okay, well, we beat that dead horse, kicked it a couple times, threw it around, beat it some more. And that's where I'm saying I don't know if I had this to do over. I probably could have been a little bit more tactful in the way that I said, hey, by the way, ranting for a couple minutes is fine. Ranting for well over an hour was a huge waste of everyone's time. And, I don't do anything for that company anymore.
Really? No way.
But that's okay. That's okay on both fronts. So, and so it's this idea that, as the owner, yeah, sure, you've got a captive audience. No one's gonna get up and be like, "Hey, yeah, you suck, and we're done." And
Oh yeah, right.
and so, but what a waste of everyone's time to just keep everyone there for all that time and holding them almost hostage, as it were.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And that's a little bit extreme, but
Yeah.
haven't we all been in a situation where, there are things that we could work on and we're just stuck in
Right.
that meeting?
Right. So let's dive in a little bit deeper. Let's talk about some of the elements of an ineffective meeting, right? Some of the things that exist in these worthless meetings, and then we'll talk about the cost of those and what some solutions to those may be as well. So some of the things that we've already identified here is having or not having a safe space, or having like a lack of trust to work together as a group in, right?
Yeah. And so when we're talking about safe space, does your management team feel like they can talk openly and honestly without fear of, retaliation, without fear of criticism, without, and are they honest with you?
Yeah.
And,
right.
That's a hard one, especially if you're the person in charge. That's a hard one to know, because you go up to, "Hey, are you being honest with me?" Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
boss. Yes, I am.
Right. But how much worse off is the owner of the company if people are, just telling them what they want to hear, surrounding themselves by yes men?
Yeah.
And so that safe space, that's one of the key elements that I think needs to be present in every meeting. So I'm glad that you brought that one up.
Yeah, and it's not just so you mentioned among the management team members and whatever, but this could be any team meeting, any meeting where there's a group of people, whether it's with the CEO or whether it's the marketing manager and his team, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or I don't know, whatever. So any time that there's this group working together, even if there's no hierarchical kind of a structure to it, those individuals within that group need to trust each other with the content and the relationships that they're working in, to be able to give and accept feedback in a not necessarily a positive way, but a respectful and helpful way, right?
Yeah. Not everything has to be, "Oh, that's a good idea. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Oh, you're a wonderful person. I'm so glad you're here with us today." I mean, you can respectfully say, "I disagree. I don't think that we should do that." And that's key.
Mm-hmm.
If in the meeting, if 100% of the people are agreeing 100% of the time, it means that people aren't sharing their true feelings.
Right.
Because as human beings, we just don't agree that much.
Oh, for sure not.
And so, if you walk out of a meeting and everyone's like, "Yes, yes, yes," then they're just lying to you.
Right. So other things, in terms of the safe space, other things that I think contribute to that as well, or not contribute to that, rather, stem from not having a safe space, is the people you're working with aren't going to be empowered, like you're saying, to speak up, to give their opinion, to contradict. All of these things are healthy.
Yeah.
In a meeting.
Right.
It's healthy to go against the grain sometimes when you feel that it's right, not necessarily just for the sake of going against the grain. Nobody likes that guy. That guy's a prick.
Well, okay, and maybe I'm too much that guy, and that's why I'm defending this here.
I can tell you right now, yeah, you are.
As I'm going against you right now.
Safe space.
No,
safe
space. Thank you. Yeah. But I do think there's a healthy level of, playing the opposing side, the devil's advocate.
Oh, for sure. I totally agree.
To a point.
Right.
And some people, they just
Oh yeah.
push it, and maybe I'm the pot calling the kettle black here for a moment, but you want a little bit of devil's advocate. You want a little bit of opposition to any idea, even if you agree with the idea.
Exactly. Yeah. So I totally agree, because I've been in meetings or in conversations or decision-making processes where there are 2 or 3 or 4 people and you're all inclined to go one direction and nobody is vying for the other option. It's like, well, maybe we should take a look at that. And I often find myself being that guy, because I feel like I have the foresight or the knowledge, what am I trying to say? Just the high level,
the perspective.
Thank you. Holy cow, that was difficult. I feel like I can maintain the perspective to approach something from a contradictory standpoint that may not be my own view. And that has benefited the group often, because not necessarily that we've changed our minds and gone down that path, but to gain more clarity around why exactly it is that we're doing what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. And I think that term perspective is really a lot of where the power of meetings lies, is that everyone who comes in with a unique and different perspective, which is super healthy if used correctly. See, here's another issue that I've seen in a lot of meetings, is when you bring the wrong perspective to the table.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna be clear here. When I'm saying perspective, I really mean when you bring the wrong people to the table. Like, you feel obligated to invite someone to a meeting just because you don't want them to feel like they've been, left out or ignored or something like that. I was in a meeting recently, just a small departmental meeting, and there were a couple people that didn't need to be there. And I told them, I said, hey, we don't need you guys here.
Yeah.
And they just looked at me like, what? You're kicking us out?
Yeah.
And afterwards I went and talked to him and I said, nothing personal, just we didn't need you, and I knew you had stuff you needed to take care of. So go ahead and focus on what you need to do. But yeah, we're going to this is who's going to be in this meeting, and we're going to keep that there. And so, having the wrong people come to the meeting, oftentimes it brings in a perspective that doesn't need to be there.
Yeah, it becomes a distraction or a hindrance to be able to make the decisions that need to be made, right? Mm-hmm. And that leads to something that I feel like is very similar and yet different enough that I think it needs to be addressed, is also not having the right people in that meeting.
Yeah.
So if you accidentally or on purpose leave somebody out, which doesn't create a safe space, but we've already covered that. So if you don't have the right person there to make a decision that needs to be made, or to collaborate on something where that's their expertise, then you're really hindering the effectiveness of that meeting, right?
Yeah.
It's not that it becomes completely worthless, but these are all things that pull back that effectiveness, that draw power from what can be really powerful meetings.
Yeah, and so often as a culture, as a society, we kind of put things into compartments, into boxes. We like to frame it in a way that makes sense to us. And so you get into a small business and you have the sales and marketing department, you have the accounting and finance department, you have the, operations, production, and we kind of have these departments, and we automatically assume that every meeting is centered around departments. And whereas that's often the case, a good departmental meeting is great to have, but oftentimes you need that interdepartmental, and that doesn't mean that everyone from that department needs to be invited.
Right.
It's decision by committee, which is not, that's groupthink. That's this idea that we're going to water down the best decisions because we have invited the concept of groupthink into our meeting, rather than trimming down and getting the right people, the right mix as we need.
Yeah, to be able to make those decisions appropriately, right?
Right.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, so, when we're talking about getting the right people, one of the ways that you can gauge if you have the right people is if you keep having the meeting after the meeting, then that's an indication that the wrong mix was in the meeting in the first place.
Yeah, that's a good perspective. I feel like, because that just means that people aren't getting what they need out of that meeting, or they're, whatever they're there for. Okay, let me reframe this. So if you have a mix of the wrong people and the right people in a meeting, you go about that meeting. After that meeting, you have this meeting after the meeting. Oftentimes it's with the right people that were in that meeting that
should have done the meeting in the first place.
Yeah, they found that it wasn't effective enough. They didn't get what they needed out of it. And so therefore there is this need for the meeting after the meeting. They get together and end up making decisions outside of the meeting,
right? Or
planning or collaborating in a different way than, and then the whole group that should have been involved in that wasn't.
Yeah. And there's a number of reasons why humans will, linger and do this meeting after the meeting. It's not always that there's the wrong mix of people, but that is something to look for. It can also go back to that safe space.
Yeah.
If in the meeting it's not a safe space, but the meeting after the meeting is a safe space. I mean, how many times have you seen a meeting and then after the meeting, someone's like, hey, I need to talk to you.
Yeah.
And then they go off into a safe space and the two of them speak openly what they were afraid to say in the meeting because, they didn't want to be...
I didn't want to get bulldozed by Brad.
Yeah. and so this whole thing, if you're seeing that you're having a lot of meetings after the meeting, that's a sign that your meetings are not running correctly, that you're not doing what you need to be doing.
Well, and you may not see the meeting after the meeting, but an indicator that there are those happening is if you have a meeting and then a week later you come back. So I'm going to go with a departmental meeting. So you have your Monday morning departmental meeting, right? You make decisions or you feel like it's going in a particular direction. And then you come back the next week and it's gone in a different direction. And that if that happens regularly, then you're very, very likely having meetings after the meeting. You're not having that right mix of people or trust involved there.
Yeah. And so that's kind of a really good lead into why do we have these meetings in the first place? So when we're meeting as a company, as an entrepreneur, meeting with, my mastermind or, my mentor, these are opportunities to make better decisions. This is a decision-making process.
Right.
And so really one of the objectives of your meeting should be to come up with the best decision available and to get the input of all of the stakeholders and, get their ideas and, get different perspectives to avoid pitfalls and different things like that. And so it's really this decision-making process. And so one of the things that I'd like to challenge our listeners to do is when you go into the meeting, make sure that everyone knows why they're going into the meeting, and when they're going out of the meeting, were the decisions made that needed to be made, and does everyone feel that that's the decision that was made? I had an experience where I was working with a business, and we went in. We kind of met as it was their management team. I was sitting there as a consultant and providing some input and some feedback. And they went and they made a decision. Then when they went to present the decision to the company, the management team wasn't on the same page. And in front of the entire company, there were two people that were going at it with different opinions. And I was like, okay, remember the meeting that we had? The whole point of that meeting was to not have this happen, so that we could get on the same page before you got in front of the entire company. Like, this awkward.
No, that's when you pull out the popcorn. Yeah, it's going down. Get your video camera out.
Yeah.
So one problem I see, I'm going to challenge this a little bit here.
Okay.
One problem that I see, or that I could see people as they're listening to this thinking like, okay, well, if you only have the right people in for specific decisions or whatever, you're going to have 1,000 meetings, right? Like, because if you have to make a decision on this and only 2 of these 3 people need to be involved, well, then you just have a meeting with those 2 people or whatever.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
It's perfectly acceptable to, and it's wise to clump kind of ideas together. And that's where a lot of times you see these meetings come together as like a department meeting, right? They're coming together as a department meeting because all of these things are kind of related. Not all 6 people in the department are going to be involved in every topic that's discussed, but at some point, all 6 of those people will be involved.
Yeah.
On one level or another, right?
And I think to the point that you're making, which is a very valid point, and I'm glad that you bring it up, anytime that I am leading the meeting, I don't expect that everyone in the meeting is constantly engaged with every topic and every item.
Yeah.
But, you might have to check out for 5 minutes
Yeah.
while we talk about something else that really doesn't involve you as much. And that's still a healthy meeting.
Right.
If, as you put it, everyone at some point is, connecting back in and coming back in.
Well, and another thing that I feel that we've done well in the past is kind of segment. I don't know how to say this. Like, we kind of segment out our meetings. So for the first half an hour, we will have all 6 people involved, right? And we'll be going through everything that needs to be discussed there. And like you've said, we'll, 30 minutes into it, once we're taking care of the whole group, then we'll dismiss 2 or 3 people that don't need to be involved in the next 20 minutes.
Right.
And so we're kind of breaking it out. And so it's not just captivating. It's not, holding this audience captive for the duration of this mindless checking out, playing on your phone, whatever that turns into for them.
Yeah. So I want to kind of wrap this all up in a concept that I like to use to help me stay on track and to help the businesses that I work with stay on track. And that is, what is the cost of this meeting? I think far too few businesses will take the time to identify the costs that are going into a meeting. So think about this for a second. Let's say that I have a management team, and on my management team, let's say that I've got 5 people. Okay. And if you think about it, in a company that's going to have a management team of 5 people, what is going to be the cost of each one of those people? Now, I don't know exactly what you are paying your employees, but at the management level, you can figure that they're not the low-dollar employees. And so you've got high-dollar employees. And so let's say that we're looking at, and I'm just going to throw out $50 an hour, okay? It might be more. It's probably not too much less, but we'll put it at about $50 an hour is the cost of your management team. You got 5 of them there. That's $250 per hour for you guys to sit and meet. So if you have a 2-hour meeting, that's $500. And I look at this and I say, okay, did you get $500 worth of insight, worth of decision, worth of information on your business? Think of it this way. If you were to hire a consultant and they come in and they work for $500 and produce something, you'd expect a deliverable.
Right.
You would expect something from them. You wouldn't go week after week after week of shelling out $500 to this consultant. And you're laughing, and I also know people who have gone week after week and racked up some pretty serious dough.
It happens all the time.
Right. But you shouldn't go week after week after week of just paying out $500 at a pop for nothing.
Right.
Why do that internally? If you won't do it externally, don't do it internally. Don't do it with your own staff and pull them away from what they need to be doing.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the point there is be intentional, right? Be purposeful about why you're doing these things. So again, to revisit why we started, or where we were when we started this episode, is all too often it's just out of habit. It's out of because, that's what we do. We have a department, so we have a meeting. Well, take a second and think about that. You know what I mean? And that's a great way to look at it, is to say, okay, how much is this meeting costing me?
Mm-hmm.
You know,
what am I getting for that?
What's the deliverable out of this? Am I getting that deliverable? And is that deliverable worth X amount that it's costing me for these people to sit here for an hour?
Yeah. And I think that's the challenge we're going to leave with our listeners today, is to say, next meeting that you find yourself leading, estimate the cost of that meeting and come up with a deliverable, and make sure that the deliverable matches the cost or exceeds the cost. If not, change your meeting up. Make it work. Make it happen. So this has been our weekly episode. If you like what you heard, go ahead and subscribe. Marketing Management and Money. We love to hear your comments, your feedback, whatever you have for us, and tune in next week.